Good evening there, ladies and gentlemen. I suppose I should say afternoon. Hopefully, everything will be going out live because once again, YouTube has decided it needed to change the entirety of its studio layout, presumably just to confuse boomers like me. So, if this is going out, then you should all be able to hear me, and hopefully, I should be in the appropriate pitch as well, avoiding that god awful half octave lower bug that occasionally seems to show up for no apparent reason. Interesting things about, well, YouTube shenanigans and all of that good stuff while we're talking about YouTube, because it seems anytime I want to talk about the Academy and the state of the Academy and things like that, there inevitably has to be a complaint about YouTube because, YouTube is, of course, awful. When I was setting this up, I wanted to try to find the page because I like to go to the watch page, and that way I can observe the stream as it's going. I can mute it and I can pull the chat out of there so that you can appear on screen as you see yourselves right now. And of course, I do all of this to ensure there is some sort of quality to the stream. I like to produce a product that has at least some sort of minimum standard. And to my surprise, I could not find the stream. Obviously, the stream page had been created because the studio was telling me, there are people awaiting the beginning of your stream. But there was no link to the stream. So I thought, well, I will go to my YouTube profile, because whenever you are preparing a stream, whenever there is a link to a stream that is about to start, there is a box on your profile that says, this event is upcoming, and that is a link to it. So I went to my profile. It wasn't there. And I thought, that's odd. So I waited 5 minutes, refreshed the page, wasn't there. Waited 10 minutes, refreshed the page, wasn't there. So instead, I opened up a different web browser, went to my profile page, and lo and behold, in that other browser, when I was not signed in, there was the live stream waiting page. So I clicked on that and then copy-pasted it into the browser that I'm actually using to control all of this so that I could see my own stream. It would appear, ladies and gentlemen, YouTube has gone so far as to now be shadow banning my own content from myself when I'm signed in and viewing my own profile. It's, wow, it's... YouTube, YouTube as a platform. This is where it's at, ladies and gentlemen, these days, I'm afraid. It's just... This is the thing. This is how this platform is working now. As I always like to tell you, don't use this platform. Get off of it if you can. Go over to BitChute. BitChute has apparently become a lot better in recent times. It now has its own native comment platform, so it's not actually reliant on Discuss anymore, which is of course much nicer because that way you don't have to deal with them. And apparently they've also, I think they recently just passed the funding goal to actually fix the search function. So now if you search for something on BitChute, you will actually find that thing as opposed to hundreds of completely unrelated things. So that platform is getting better all the time. And of course the old guard platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and whatnot, will of course continue to throttle that website because it is a wonderful threat to their relative monopoly that obviously they don't want to lose. So, before we go further, now that we've got those two little formalities out of the way, it is of course October, which is the spookiest time of the year. So you will notice in the bottom left of the stream there is a spooky, scary little ghost who is there. I should mention a relationship that I have with that ghost. That ghost is actually my spirit that has recently vacated my body as a result of reading the paper that we are about to be looking at today. And of course, therefore, it is considerably less scary than the thing that we are about to read, which is going to be this wonderful little gem straight out of the Academy, as you can see from the Journal of Sexualities there in the top right. Queer heterotopias in straight-ish spaces, the case of Korean spas. This is a paper which was published not all that long ago, so it is relatively fresh from this year. It does, of course, fit into the wonderful little trap, I suppose it is, of the social so-called sciences, where it has not been cited by anyone, because, of course, about 3/4 of all of that stuff will never be cited by anyone. So we'll go through the abstract, and then I will have to introduce you to a term that's going to be coming up quite a little bit, and then we'll go through there. So I suppose I should say, before we get into the abstract, I should probably notice the chat a little bit. Chat, it's been a while since we had a conversation, hasn't it, chat? It's been a while. Like I said, YouTube has had enough time to completely update and destroy its own streaming studio thing, which is probably more of a commentary on how infrequently I use it than anything else. So how is everyone in there? Someone asks, what did you just stumble into? Well, you just stumbled into gay Korean spas. That's pretty much it. Straight men who go to spas and do totally no homo things there. Yes. Heterotopia, someone asks. Yes, that's the term which we're going to have to talk about a little bit. Like I said, I will go through the abstract and then we'll talk about heterotopia, because of course we're dealing with queer theory. Heterotopia does not mean what you think it will mean based on what that word is, because of course the far left academics who pen this sort of stuff, who talk about queer studies, they like to piggyback off of language from other fields, and they like to borrow certain terminology and then radically change the meaning of it so that they can use words which the uninitiated will think they're saying one thing, but when in reality they're saying other things. Of course, you may be reminded of how the term racism now means two different things, insofar as when you say racism or racist to most people, they will think, that means the discrimination against anyone because of things like the colour of their skin. And that's where that definition will end. That is the common parlance of it. But of course, these days, the term racism basically means the power plus privilege, which means you can't be racist towards white people and various other pseudoscience ideals like that, because they have to, like I said, co-opt certain terms and co-opt certain pieces of language and change them so that they can call things which they aren't, which often then have worse meanings than what normal people would think, because it's kind of a form, as someone in chat says, it is a form of gatekeeping in a certain light. It's there is a term for it when people use and abuse language like this. It's called obscurantism. It's when they use needlessly fluffy, flowery language that is relatively impenetrable to people who are not within that field. But once you understand those terms, you realize that what they're saying is often nonsensical. It falls into the category of profound bullshit, which is a study, of course, which was done where if you flowered up your language suitably, people would basically go, it sounds really impressive and therefore it must be. But, of course, what is actually underneath all of that interesting sounding jargon is nothing very impressive at all. So, with all of that out of the way, I'm going to we'll go through the abstract and then we'll talk about the heterotopia, because, well, that's the term which we're going to have to talk about. So, the cultural shift leading to increased tolerance for diverse sexualities over the past few decades has transformed the landscape of traditionally queer spaces. Given the mainstream trend towards homonormativity and respectability politics, this paper examines the consequences of these changes for the articulation of queer intimacy and sexual freedom. Basically, the gays done won it, and so it's becoming more normal, because that's pretty much it. And as a result of gay people and gayness being accepted, everything changes, even though nothing has really changed. So, drawing from comments posted on an online public forum, which is of course the most academic way of studying things, going to forums and saying, this is what some people have said on forums, because that peak academia, ladies and gentlemen. I remind you of that paper where, I can't remember the name of the author of that paper. It was the one about why men's rights activists have feelings, and they found some guy on a forum once who said men are just fucked, and as a result they spawned like 30 pages of pseudoscience where they just basically said, well, the only reason that you think men should have human rights is because you're scared of getting fucked in the ass and having your dick cut off. Obviously. Because one guy said men are just fucked, and it was spectacular. It was amazing. So, drawing from those online forum posts, I consider how men engage in the queer occupation of Korean spas by reimagining these businesses as places for queer sex. So this is someone who obviously spends a lot of time cruising for gay action on certain web forums where men go to meet up at these Korean spas, and this person has obviously just decided that their hobby needs to have an academic paper written about it. Not the first time that this has happened, and it will not be the last. I position Korean spas as a queer heterotopia, allowing men space to violate the centering of homonormative subjectivity. While the sexual practices of these men resist queer normativity, they simultaneously mobilize hegemonic, racialized discourses, ultimately threatening the queer heterotopic potential of the space. Thus, this work offers instances of both queer promise and failure, where normative structures are simultaneously challenged and upheld. Of course, the keywords queer heterotopia, Korean spa, bathhouse, homonormativity, and cruising. Because that is just what you want to see in the keyword search of a peer-reviewed academic journal, the term cruising. So what is the heterotopia that this person is going to be talking about? Well, if you are in any way familiar with the English language, you're probably looking at heterotopia or heterotopic and going, hetero, different, okay, different things, topia, as in from Greek topos, place, so different places. Obviously, that's what that word means, right? It's different places, or places where things are different, or different things in different places. It obviously means something like that. No, my dear and gentle viewer, no, it is nothing that simple. You think you understand English? Boy, sit yourself down and get ready for some nonsensical pseudoscience, because of course heterotopia does not mean what it actually means, because this is queer studies, which of course means it's the term heterotopia, as in a space, related to the famous pseudoscientist Michael Foucault, who was basically a batshit insane far-left person who had some pretty retarded ideas about how humans and humanity worked. He was one of those people, you see him cited an awful lot by feminists and social justice advocates. He falls into a similar camp as people like Sigmund Freud, where he might have said some vaguely interesting things, but over the last few decades, pretty much everything that he said has been objectively proven to be wrong. And yet some people still latch on to his ideas as if they are something that is actually worth it. So the heterotopia space here is a concept elaborated by Foucault to describe certain cultural, institutional, and discursive spaces that are somehow other disturbing, intense, incompatible, contradictory, or transforming. Heterotopias are worlds within worlds, mirroring and yet upsetting what is outside. Foucault provides examples: ships, cemeteries, bars, brothels, prisons, gardens of antiquity, fairs, Muslim baths, and many more. Foucault outlines the notion of heterotopia on 3 occasions between 1966 and 67. A talk to a group of architects is the most well-known explanation of the term. His first mention of the concept in his preface to The Order of Things, and refers to texts rather than socio-cultural spaces. So as you can see, it's basically a load of nonsense that posits that because some spaces are different from other spaces, that somehow means that there's some sort of conflict between them. A popular example which is often brought up is things like public toilets or public bathrooms, because it's like, oh, it's different because this place has different rules from outside that place, and because if you're in like a public bath, you might be allowed to take more clothes off than if you were not at that place, and it's all so different, and it's basically a bunch of nonsense about, yeah, different places have different rules because different places are different from each other, and instead of just that's where it ends, they read into it a whole bunch of they just kind of spooge a bunch of nonsense all over the top of it. It's it's basically seeing the cigar as, not just a cigar. Obviously, a cigar is always just a big brown dick that you're sucking on. It could never just be a cigar, because this is how these sorts of people think about this. So we're going to go through this, and we're going to do what we are frequently told to do, my dear chat, and we're going to educate ourselves on this topic. As someone correctly points out, different places have different functions. They're not different worlds. Yes, that is correct. But remember, this is Foucault, and Foucault was a very, very strange person. So the introduction. The public opinion surrounding homosexuality in the US has become increasingly tolerant over the past few decades. Indeed, 63% of Americans support same-sex marriage in 2019, continuing a general trend towards liberalizing attitudes and increasing social acceptance of LGBTQ people. Additionally, the proportion of US adults claiming an LGBT identity continues to increase, reaching an estimated 4.5% in 2017, or 11 million Americans. If in years prior, gays were relegated to the margins, forced into subterranean spaces given violent politics of heteronormativity, gays today are more likely embraced as respectable citizens and community members. While research continues to complicate this narrative of linear progression demonstrating the rigidity of discriminatory policies and prejudicial attitudes, other scholarships have investigated the effects of this profound cultural shift, described by some scholars as a post-gay turn, such that queerness can exist comfortably and openly alongside heterosexuality. So, of course, it's not just that a group of people had gained some rights that they previously didn't have. Nope, nothing can be that simple. Everything else has to be projected into this pseudo-scientific, pseudo-intellectual world where things mean a lot more than they actually do. This is setting that up. Of course, the idea of this being some sort of post-gay world is hilarious. It is not a world after the gays. The gays are still here. It's just a place where there is legal equality between all people. These immutable characteristics are not taken into consideration. Of course, they will be in the not-too-distant future, because we're reaching a time and a place where immutable characteristics are things which people must take into consideration first and judge everyone on now, because this is how the world seems to be turning, which is, of course, absurd, but that's another topic for another time. So, given this accumulation of political and social recognition, some have expressed concern for the demise of queer spaces. which is interesting considering so-called queer spaces still exist. There are gay bars that exist. There are lesbian bars that exist. There are burlesque clubs and pubs that still exist that put on all sorts of pretty damn gay shit like that. These spaces still exist. They are not demising. It just is. And in fact, as you can see, they are, when you look at things like drag queen story time, which has been causing all sorts of problems lately, you could almost say that these places are expanding, not demising. They are not shrinking. They seem to be forcing their way into every single element of people's lives, whether they want them to be there or not. Unfortunate as that is. This scholarship describes how contemporary gay consumption spaces often work to foster appropriately queer identities through the inculcation of a morally respectable white queer middle upper class. Thus, with homosexuality approaching the charmed circle of normative sexuality in the US, some gay people have turned to tactics of assimilation, respectability, and tolerance, culminating in a new homonormativity. So, in other words, the standard for what it is to be gay has changed somehow. Hopefully they're going to elaborate a little bit further on that in these papers, because I was under the impression that being gay just meant that you were homosexual, as in you were just attracted to people who were the same biological sex as you. But apparently that is changing, because fuck having any sort of standard by which we can judge these things. You can't keep words meaning the same thing year after year. Everything has to change its meaning eventually, because why the hell not? In this paper, I analyse an online discussion forum associated with men seeking sex in Korean spas in Los Angeles to explore both the consequences and burgeoning possibilities resulting from these rapid cultural shifts, examining how some men reimagine the heteronormative environment of the spa into what Angela Jones calls a queer heterotopia. So basically, gay guys go to spas and turn them into really gay places as opposed to not gay places. So one has to, of course, wonder why exactly an author would want to write a paper such as this. One has to wonder what the purpose is. I don't think it's something you just kind of pluck out of the air. Like, you don't become a PhD in something and think, what can I write about today? Gay spas, gay sex in spas, Korean spas. Like, I don't think that's something that just comes up out of nowhere. I have a sneaking suspicion that the author of this paper frequently cruises these forums and probably had some sort of limit on how many papers they had to write, and they were like, damn, I have to write a paper this year. And then they just turn to their phone, and their eye flicks to Grindr open on their phone, and they're just like, jackpot. That'll do, pig. That'll do. And so they write about their gay cruising, much like that guy and his weird prostitution. What was that thing? The Diaries of the Leaky Traveler. That guy who basically went and bought prostitutes in the Dominican Republic, I think it was, or something like that, and just turned his diary into a peer-reviewed academic paper, because this is how these sorts of people this is how they operate. It's not gay sex, it's the kindness muscle massage, TLDR. The kindness muscle. That's an old meme. Oh, we haven't had the kindness muscle for a few years, but I think you might be onto something, chat. I think there might be massaging of some kindness muscles going on here. Someone else also says there are many self-identified pigs on Grindr. I would ask if that's personal experience that you're speaking from, but let's be honest, it isn't. And of course, as someone else in chat remembers from the Diaries of the Leaky Traveler, Suave. He told me suave. And of course I knew then that Colombians must be very delicate lovers. God, that paper it's indelible to my hippocampus. I can't get certain parts of it out of my brain. It's like the mental equivalent of having something burned onto the inside of your eyelids. It's just there is no amount of anything that will get rid of it. Continuing onwards with our gay cruising pig here, in my analysis of Korean spas as a site of queer heterotopic potential, I focus on three patterned themes: the eroticization of discretion, policing respectability, and sexual racism. Sexual racism, I think the correct term for that is race play, but maybe it's something else that this person is talking. Someone is just saying, please don't do that again. What, you don't want me to whisper suave into your ear, chat? You don't want me to say suave and remind you that you are a very gentle lover, chat? Because I'm sure you are. So yes, sexual racism, this is a thing that we are apparently going to be talking about today. By intentionally foregoing other sex locations, case bar sex is constructed here as morally distinct and uniquely desirable by virtue of its transgressive nature. I don't think guys who are cruising for gay sex forego other locations. I think the case bar is a location in addition to the other locations, because that seems to be how these very high sex drive gay people seem to operate. Pretty much anywhere and everywhere. It's a crime of opportunity for them, it would seem. So, men cruising eroticize the necessity of discretion in case bar interactions, given surveillance of sexual behavior in these spaces. In other words, you're not supposed to be having sex there, so it's a little bit naughty. That's what it is. It's a little bit dirty. You're not supposed to do it. So I would imagine that's probably part of the thrill for them. While these encounters disrupt respectability politics, acting respectfully is simultaneously recast as necessary for the preservation of case bars as sexual venues. Yes, because if it turns out all of the people who are going to these bars are fucking each other, you get shut down because you're basically operating a fucking brothel. Thus, some men police the emergence of sex in case bars as being non-disruptive to the heteronormative context of the space. At the same time, I discuss how racial hierarchies are mobilized to stratify sexual actors in the spa, reiterating larger structures of inequality and compromising queer heterotopic potential. Oh god, how very dare those people not want to have a spa that they go to be shut down for being turned into a gay brothel. How dare they? How dare someone want to just go somewhere and maybe, like, get a fucking massage done or something, or sit in a steam room for a while and not have police kicking the door down and saying, "Oi, what the hell are you doing in here?" because you've got a 15-man gangbang going on in the back room. I don't think you understand. You're not allowed to run places like this because it's illegal. Anyway, what is the theoretical framework? Homonormativity and queer heterotopias. While acknowledging the past effectiveness of gay space in inculcating a sense of safety for queer communities, recent work complicates their contemporary function and relevance. As a result of growing liberalization towards diverse sexualities and increasing hostility towards LGBT people, I wonder why that might be happening. I wonder, does it have anything to do with those weird little drag kids who are being paid to dance around in scant clothing in front of gay men, usually at the behest of the parents, because it's a great way of them getting lots of attention and money? And you know, those drag queens, some of whom have been found to be sex offenders, reading to children. I wonder if anything like that might be leading to increased hostility towards a certain part of that community. Just something to think about there. Sometimes, maybe sometimes the hostility that you encounter is something that you fucking deserve because you brought it on yourself. Anyway, some gay folks find they are no longer limited to those singular, discreetly defined gay spaces and move beyond those confines. Further, some scholarship demonstrates a decreased importance of sexual orientation for how some queer people define their subjectivities, such that centralization of sexual identity is seen as reifying a reductive understanding of complex personhood. As someone in chat correctly points out, if you get browbeaten and are forced to tolerate something, it actually builds resentment. Yes. Yes, it does. It does. This is what happens. You get these papers like this. They're talking about the growing liberalization and this decreasing hostility towards it. Well, in some circles, it's decreasing. In other circles, it's increasing. And it's normally because of what you're doing. Like, if it was just, as the old saying went, no, what was it? Don't ask, don't tell. If it was just that, then I think people wouldn't have much of a problem with it. But when it's shoving things down your throat that you don't want, well, then it becomes a little bit different. So, explaining the changing relationship of LGBTQ people with traditional queer spaces, other scholars identifying an emerging homonormativity resulting from the marriage of queer politics with neoliberal capitalism as driving these shifts. This scholarship highlights that mainstream queer politics in the US relies on the formation of a respectably queer subject by adopting values and appearances otherwise palatable to heteronormativity, thus obstructing non-normative queer subjectivities. So, this is where we start getting the complaints coming in that gay people have to adhere to some sort of social standard and that therefore this is in some way disadvantageous for them because gay people can't be absolute raging faggots without having some people saying, hey, could you tone it down just a little bit? It's like what you do behind closed doors, that's fine, but the rainbow dildo covered dick suit in a children's playground with your gimp that you're sodomizing who's dressed as a leather dog, like, maybe you could not do that here. Like, just dial it back just a little bit. Because, apparently if you point that out, you're the person with the problem these days. This is the world that we are moving towards. And in some ways, it's incredibly entertaining. Homonormativity, as an assimilationist ethos, does not challenge heterosexist institutions and values, but rather upholds, sustains, and seeks inclusion within them. A particular formation of respectable queerness thus emerges vis-a-vis its inhabitation and reproduction of heteronormative sexual and gender norms. Basically, gay people acting like normal people because being normal is a thing. These include the desire to pass as straight and the privatization of intimacy within the context of monogamous long-term relationships, which, as we all well know, when you get people who are really, really big into the gay agenda, they don't like that because the idea of you can't just be monogamous, you've got to chase those bugs, chap, never forget. You got to give the gift, you got to get the gift, you got to do all of that stuff. Because that's normal and you just have to accept it, bigot. So, homonormativity is thus an extension of heteronormativity. No, I think it's just people being normal. That's the normality. can you please put away the rainbow dildo suit? Like, don't wear that, because that's weird. That's not normal. Dress like a normal person. It's not a form of oppression or anything like that. So, inspiring the exchange of a radical queerness for conditional neoliberal acceptance. By adopting this discourse of sameness with heterosexuals, this rights-based movement marginalizes those excluded from homonormative ideas. Only those spaces reinforcing an appropriately queer identity are legitimized. Stryker in 2008 writes, "Homonormativity, I conclude, is more than an accommodation to neoliberalism in its macro-political manifestations. It is also an operation at the micro-political level, one that aligns gay interests with dominant constructions of knowledge and power that disqualify the very modes of knowing, threatening to disrupt the smooth functioning of normative spaces, and that displace modes of embodiment, calling into question the basis of authority from which normative voices speak." This is basically someone complaining that wanting gays to not be absolutely flaming is in some way a disadvantage to them. It's sowing the seeds of saying that you are oppressing someone if you basically want them to, behave with some degree of normality. This is the framework which is being applied here. This is why, when you get those people at the pride parades and whatnot, it's why they are so excessive. It's not just a bunch of normal people walking around and people behaving normally walking around. It is a bunch of people dressed up in excessive amounts of leather and gimp suits and performing all this sort of weird shit going on there. Because, you see, if you don't accept that, you're the person with the problem, because you just need to accept all of that stuff, bigot. Because it's basically trying to see it's trying to remove any and all sense of normality and or propriety from any sort of occasion and things like that. Thus, behind this mainstreaming of homosexuality is the illusion of sexual freedom. Because, of course, you don't actually have sexual freedom. Although you can have all of the sex with whoever you want, that's not actual sexual freedom. Because somewhere, someone might judge you for it, which means you're not free. Like I said, sowing the seeds of oppression there. Why do you hear didgeridoo sounds? Well, chat, let me tell you about another thing that we once talked about. This is, yes. Yes, that was another thing that happened. I'm gonna didgeridoo you in the arse, mate. God, why? Yes, that was a film that existed. I always like to imagine that film as not actually being a piece of gay pornography. I always like to imagine it as a piece about how to critique the performance of music, because of course the guy goes in, breaks it in half, and then sodomizes the man with half of the fractured musical instrument. I just like to think of it as being more like a comedy sketch for when music criticism goes a little bit too far. So, continuing ever onwards, if queerness promises the violation of normative modes of being, then an assimilationist agenda compromises this ambition, while an unapologetic celebration of queer sex, the homonormative movement trends towards queer impotence, producing queer spaces utterly devoid of queerness, because of course if you're being the queer thing, if you are doing the gay thing in a way that is vaguely normal, in a space where that behavior is normal, then it's not being queer, because it's not different by definition, because it's normal. Like I said, this is where they are sowing the seeds of oppression from this, because of course because by their standard, being this countercultural, absolute flaming level faggot, because you're then doing something which is so far outside the norm, that means it's definitely queer. But, if you are just a normal gay person who has monogamous sex with your gay partner, that's not actually properly queer because it's too much like normal thing. It's too much like what normal people do. This is how these sorts of people think, and it's absurd levels of thinking. It's basically saying you must always accept the most far out and extreme fringe thing because that thing is always the way of doing it properly, and anything less than that, it's basically you're doing gay wrong. Like at that point, that's how this sort of stuff operates. It's a little bit absurd like that, but like I said, this is the world that we're going into here. TOS, the stream may not last. What, you think this stream is going to last on YouTube? You chat. Chat, you think this stream is going to stay on YouTube? Oh, no, 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 no. Like I said, we do these streams on YouTube and then we move them to BitChute because that way BitChute gets the better quality upload. And this way YouTube gets nothing because fuck YouTube. As soon as I can do these streams on BitChute, I will be doing these streams on BitChute, and then I will probably nuke my YouTube account from orbit, because fuck this platform, I am getting royally sick of it. But let's move on with the paper, shall we? Because we do have quite a little bit more to go through. So, while some are decidedly pessimistic of contemporary homonormative politics for seeking a relatable normalcy, in other words, not being flaming, others remain hopeful and look to everyday acts of resistance in imagining emancipatory queer worlds. This return to the margins allows for the rearticulation of queer space as that which transgresses established norms, you see? Exactly what I just said. The furthest away fringe is what you must accept, because if you don't accept that, then you're doing gay wrong and you're doing tolerance wrong. You're not allowed to have any standards because standards makes you a bigot. This is why you have to bake the cake, it's why you have to eat the bugs, it's why you have to live in the pod, it's why you have to eat the bat soup, and why you must never question China. Ever. Ever, chat. Right, so. Indeed, while respectable gays invested in assimilation that is forever over the rainbow, the emergence of queer counterpublics oppose the mainstreaming of queer spaces as sites of neoliberal consumption, re-energizing revolutionary and subversive modes of sexual expression. Thus, homonormative respectability politics are positioned as simultaneously dissolving collective queer worlds while also creating the very conditions for queer utopian imaginings. As someone in chat correctly points out, he's basically mad that being accepted, he's basically mad he's being accepted and wants to upset the straights again. Yes, that is exactly what this paper is. That is what this is. This is, I am accepted, but I'm only accepted because I'm not as flaming as I want to be. Or it might not even be this guy who wants to be that flaming, but I'm pretty sure it is, because a lot of these papers are normally just thinly veiled excuses for vapid navel-gazing. But yes, I think that the author of this paper might just want to be a little more flaming, and gets upset that some people don't accept him being flaming. However flaming he is, people are just like, oh, that's just him. Yeah, fine, whatever. And he just can't accept it. I'm pretty sure there was an internet cartoon drawn about that, of some guy actually probably dressed up in the rainbow dildo suit, like guzzling 10-foot-long dicks, and just basically saying to straight people, look at me, look at what I'm doing. And then the straight people are just like, okay, but why? And then the gay person gets very offended because obviously what they're doing is absurd, and then they're like, you're not accepting my absurdity, how very dare you, because this is how it works. There are some excellent quotes from the chat. Being accepted makes me uncool, the paper. Very true. And a fantastic phrase there. Oppress me, bigot. Sounds like a fetish to me. Yeah, I think it is, chat. I think this person wants to be oppressed a little bit. I think they want to be so flaming that people just give them a bit of side eye so that they can feel like they're being really disadvantaged, even while they're on a bought and paid for, government sanctioned float going down the middle of the street with all societal approval and money being thrown at them. But one person somewhere was just like, please, just turn it down just a little bit. Just a tiny. There are children here. Just a little bit. We don't want to see the 20-man train going down the high street. We don't need to see that. There are kids here. Just please, for 5 minutes, stop shoving things up your ass in public. Just please. But you are the bigot now, chat. You are not allowed to do that because that makes you the bad man. So let's continue onwards because this. Yeah, the people who write these sorts of things, I'm sensing a level of frustration in a lot of them, and I think some of it might actually be sexual. So, where did we get to? Thus, homonormative respectability politics opposition to simultaneously dissolving. Yes, we did that. Now we get on to talk about Foucault, because of course Foucault, the famous pseudoscientist that he is, this is where we have to talk about this. Someone in chat asks, is he one of the flaming gays that wants to teach kids about fisting too? Very probably. Because don't forget, chat, when there was that plan, I cannot remember which country it was in, but there was a country which said they were planning on having sexual education for, I think it was 8-year-olds, and they actually wanted to mention fisting in it. And people saw this lesson plan and were like, excuse me? Why? Why do you need to teach people who are not sexually active about the most degenerate margins of sexuality imaginable as the stepping off point? Like, why? It's like, okay, children, now we're going to talk about the special hug, the special hug that mummies and daddies who love each other very much. So the special hug, children, is where you take your fist, you butter it up and you shove it up someone else's asshole and you just feel around inside it, you just jiggle it around, grab a handful of that appendix and squeeze it real hard. And that's how a baby is born. Children, that's how baby happens. Any questions? Anyone question time? No, it's stop crying. It's not that bad. Just question anything. This is the world we live in. This is why I want to go and live off. I want to be even more off the grid. I want to just go and live in a cabin in the woods alone. Grow some berries out the back and just go and live there. Do nothing all day but tend to my little garden of delicious things. And spend an hour or so making a cup of tea in the morning by having to go and gather water from the stream and heat it over us. That would be so much better than having to put up with all of this shit. Anyway, we have a paper to get through, chat, so let's do that. Coincidentally, if anyone would like to invest in a large area of land to come and live off-grid in the middle of nowhere in a small group of wooden cabins where we can grow lots of delicious berries and spend an hour making tea every morning, if anyone is interested in that scheme, hit me up, because I think if we pool our resources, we could actually, make a viable alternative to society. Because that's what we're told. That's what we're told all these times, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? It's just, just go and make your own. Go and make your own internet. Go and make your own service provider. Okay, chat, let's do it. Let's pool it. Let's go and make our own society. Fuck it. Let's go and do it. We will go and indulge our hermit fantasies in the middle of nowhere together, and it'll be wonderful. So, going on to Foucault and his various pseudoscience, it sounds like a cult Well, chat, look, not all cults are bad. I mean, the imperial cult now. If you want to be part of a cult, chat, you join the imperial cult. We're gonna do it for the emperor. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go out there. We are gonna plant many bushes to grow delicious berries for the emperor. How can you say no to that, chat? So, Foucault referred to these refashioned spaces allowing marginalized individuals to challenge normative structures of heterotopias. By affirming the difference of others, these counter-hegemonic zones rupture heteronormativity and offer glimpses of queer liberation. For example, in their examination of modern queer pop-ups, Stillwagon and Gaziani describe the strategies through which queer people fashion ephemeral spaces of queer community, thus challenging the notion that all LGBTQ individuals seek mainstream assimilation. So this is where people must be flaming, because if you are not flaming, then you're doing it wrong, because that's how it works. Similarly, in his study of queer spaces in Chicago's Boys Town, Orn describes what he calls sexy community, those stigmatized peripheral areas found on the outskirts of the charmed circle, which inculcate distinctly queer sexual connection. So again, it's you identify what is outside the norm. Someone in chat suggests I want a Fruitopia. Well, a Fruitopia would be pretty good, but maybe we shouldn't call it a Fruitopia, because I think the author of this paper also wants a Fruitopia, but I think it's a different kind of fruit that we're talking about here. So extending Foucault, Jones theorizes queer heterotopias as sites of hope and empowerment where individuals cultivate alternative modes of being, engaging in what she calls a radical politics of subversion. Queer heterotopias demand an autonomy for queer individuals from which to challenge fixed hegemonic discourses and present new subjectivities. Building on this framework, Simula demonstrates that participants in her study of BDSM communities embrace diverse gender expressions, foregoing heterosexist regulation of their bodies. Welcome to the world in which BDSM gets studied in peer-reviewed academic journal. Welcome to 2020, ladies and gentlemen. This is how it goes. But yes, it's funny how people who have all of these weird concepts about gender, I mean, first of all, the concept of gender, even the people who created the concept of gender have basically gone on record as saying they pretty much made it all up. But it's interesting how the entire community that builds up around that tends to also have lots of really, really messed up ideas about sex, and it's very interesting how quite a lot of them tend to have sexual abuse in their history. Interesting side note there, I suppose. So, acknowledging the diluting effects of homonormative respectability politics, queer heterotopias allow experimentation with sexual desire, foregoing new kinds of queer potentiality, or forging new kinds of queer potentiality. So, gay stuff happens in gay spaces. Thank you, paper. You needed the grant that you got to write this paper was surely worth it. For instance, in their study of virtual barebacking, of a virtual barebacking community, interesting, virtual, Robinson finds that the evaluation of HIV positive status as a form of desirable sexual capital challenges the stigma surrounding larger age discourse. Yes, this was the bug. Oh, it actually mentions the bug chasers. I don't have to explain the bug chasers. Chat, you're about to learn about giving and getting the gift. You are going to find out about this. So seeking multiple and often anonymous partners, barebackers and bug chasers embrace a slut discourse, finding sexual pleasure in the subversion of gay respectability politics and the heteronormative standard of monogamy. Radical sex practices alone, however, are not adequate for the reclamation of queerness. This is perhaps best exemplified by Ward's work on straight white dudes not gay sex, illustrating how these men preserve heterosexual authenticity and heteronormativity even while having their buddy's dick in their mouth. This is a peer-reviewed paper, ladies and gentlemen. Thus, rather than policing boundaries about a fixed notion of queerness attached to certain subjectivities, acts, or performances, queerness is understood here as the interference of straight time and space. So yes, this is... I like how they didn't go into talking about the bug chasers and the barebackers, because if they did, they'd probably... Most of the people who were reading this will probably end up vomiting if you spoke about it and how these people actually envision it. Like, there are people out there who really get off on the idea of giving and getting certain sexual diseases, even things like HIV and AIDS. In fact, the existence of so-called super AIDS, what has been nicknamed super AIDS, came about basically as a result of bug chasers. That is, people who would get multiple versions of HIV and things like this. They would get multiple bugs like this, multiple diseases. And as a result of this, they basically became super bugs. And this all happened because there's a bunch of really weird degenerates out there who really get off on this idea that they are basically killing people by having sex with them. But yes, chat, I would like to highlight for chat there. Academia, the state of the academy in 2020, ladies and gentlemen. Preserve your heterosexuality even while having their buddy's dick in their mouth. I think we need to take a moment, well done. Well done. Well done, author. You got the page, you got the phrase, dick in their mouth into this journal. Like, well done. There were people who read this and thought, yeah, you know what, this, you know what, this is something that I as a peer am going to review this, and I see no reason to change anything about this paper. There is nothing about this paper at all. There is nothing about this that needs to be changed. This is absolutely fine. I like how everyday internet shitposting has basically made it into the academy. So, Korean spas. This is what we need to talk about, chat. The Korean spas, the rooftop Korean spas, the rooftop Korean no homo spas. Korean spas offer an interesting site to examine the promises and perils associated with queer heterotopias. Jones describes that queer heterotopias are not characterized by any clearly defined set of practices. The only requirement is that the practices subvert hegemonic discourses that regulate the body. In other words, they must be flaming, because if they're not flaming, then they're doing gay wrong, apparently. Using the case of Korean spas, I demonstrate that while queer heterotopias are thus imagined as spaces where infinite practices go unregulated and are not marginalized, it is the liminality of the space itself that lends to the very possibility of heterotopic subversion. That is, the sex happening in the semi-public spaces of Korean spas does articulate queerness, as these men challenge the privatization of intimacy and the consolidation of a respectable homonormative subject. Sucking a stranger's dick in the corner of a K-spa steam room while navigating the field of straight men otherwise enjoying the spa's facilities resists the sanitization of the legitimate gay world. Thus, gay sex in K-spas, signaling a rejection of respectability and assimilationist politics, captures the emancipatory potential of queer heterotopias, given this subversion of hetero and homo normativity. So, yep, this really is, if you are just the only way for you to be doing gay properly, you to be properly queer, is to be so flaming that you violate the law by engaging in public nudity and public sex acts. Because that's queerness. But yes, We are at the point, chat, where sucking a stranger's dick in the corner. This is peer-reviewed academic papers. They're fantastic. Yes, they're talking about the privatization, chat. They mean as in private, or doing things in public as opposed to in privacy. That's how it is. So, while Jones warns of the dangers in prescribing a singular reactionary conception of queer utopic visioning that glimpse into what might be, however, is simultaneously obscured by racial hierarchies. Dun dun dun, because everything has to be racist these days. Yes, as someone in chat is noticing, this paper has used the word dick twice in an unironic context. Yes, it is. This is peer review. This is the classiest of the classy. This is the top shelf. This is the best that academia has to offer. Never forget, ladies and gentlemen, this is why I tell you that academic feminism and Tumblr feminism, they're the same thing. The crazy social justice shit you find on extreme websites, places like Tumblr, and on the far left areas of Reddit and the breadline tubers and whatnot, it's the same stuff as this. It's one and the same. There is no distinction between the two. They are the same thing. So, in this way, case bars, while imagined as queer heterotopias, are also productively analysed as emergent sexual fields wherein participants compete for sexual capital, such that the potential for queer futurity is stifled by sexual stratification, effectively remarginalising gay Asian men and reifying white normativity. Here you go, it's gay Asian men are obviously the bottoms in the relationship because no one can ever outtop the gay white man. The gay white man is obviously the top in every single circumstance. This is how this is working. Someone is asking, can we purge these people from academia? Unfortunately, not easily, because these people have unfortunately, these people have the support. They have the societal support. They have the institutional support. This sort of viewpoint, this sort of language, these sorts of people who write this sort of stuff, they have pretty much all of the power in the situation. So the odds of you being able to get rid of them is pretty much impossible. And yet, these people still seem to think that they are the oppressed people in society. They think that they are the poor oppressed people who don't have any sort of power or anything like that. But people who write this sort of stuff, not only do they have the institutional power, but they tend to also be the majority position as well. What is sexual capital, chat? Well, let's read on and see if they explain. But as far as my understanding of it is, sexual capital is kind of my understanding of the term, because it's used frequently when we talk about things like the sexual market value. Your sexual capital is basically how sexually desirable you are. So if, for instance, we talk about the sexual market value and how men and women operate on it, women's sexual capital would be signifiers of youth and fertility, which is why whenever women, dress themselves up and make themselves look more attractive, they do things like blush their cheeks and redden their lips, which are signs, or they do that artificially with makeup, which is a sign of sexual arousal, because that's what that mimics, because that is sort of tied to their sexual value, because it implies sort of that youth and fertility state. And when men want to make themselves more sexually desirable, they tend to wear more Veblen goods. That is, things which are more expensive than they need to be for their function, and to do things that would increase or give the illusion of increased social status. So that would be what sexual capital is in that. It's basically, as someone in chat correctly points out, sexual capital is basically, are you hot or not, and how you measure that. So, what is a Korean spa and why study them? This is a question that I really wish this author had dealt with at the start of this paper, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that the author of this paper has a vested personal interest in them that they may or may not actually mention in this paper. Of course, this paper is not supposedly an autoethnography, which is basically the fancy word for Dear Diary, but we'll see if they're willing to admit, because I'm pretty damn sure that's what's going on here. Korean spas are ethnic businesses, which for a small entrance fee provide a public bathhouse environment replete with an array of saunas, steam rooms, and hydrotherapy pools for relaxation and rejuvenation. These gender-segregated wet areas require patrons to be completely naked, a rule strictly enforced. At Korean spas, the prudish are left at the door, as full and semi-constant bodily exposure constitutes normal expected behavior. While there are approximately 10 Korean spas in Koreatown, Los Angeles alone, obviously this author has a lot of personal experience with that, many more are littered throughout LA and the Orange County and can be found in other cities throughout the US, boasting sizable Korean populations, e.g. NYC, MY, Bergen County, NJ, and all of these other strings of letters that mean nothing to me because America is a faraway and distant land of strangeness. Transplanted from Korea, these establishments are modelled after traditional public bathhouses called Jimjilbang. I'm guessing that's how you're supposed to pronounce that. Are typically owned and operated by Korean entrepreneurs and cater largely to Korean immigrant communities. However, K-spas are increasingly frequented by diverse clientele interested in this cultural experience. As someone in chat correctly points out, people expect you to be naked in a bath? I know, right? It's absolutely insane, but apparently this is something which is really out there and crazy for some people. Additionally, Korean spa activities are often done in the company of close friends and family members, with these facilities generally structured in a large open format allowing for diverse kinds of social mingling. For the Korean community, K-spas offer a wholesome experience of cleansing and socializing, with many billed as family-oriented spaces, signaling an assumption of heterosexuality. Within the isolated steam rooms and dark sleeping areas, however, K-spas are also a place where men surreptitiously have sex with other men, despite efforts to minimize such activity. Yes, because if you do this, it's fucking illegal, and the place that you're doing it in can end up getting shut down. Because they end up being basically having it asserted that they are running brothels, which is not good. While ominous signs posted throughout K-spas warn of legal repercussions for lewd behavior, some men continue to cruise these spaces, carefully evaluating subtle cues from others that might signal similar intent. As such, K-spas represent a kind of liminal sexual geography, one that is neither fully gay nor straight. Well, it seems pretty obvious to me that they are supposed to be straight places. They are supposed to be spaces in which you don't have sex, and yet gay people do it anyway because of general degeneracy and things like that. That's how it works, I'm afraid. There's just some people, they can't control themselves. There's no sense of how about you don't have sex in a public place? I argue that this latency of sexual potential in the Korean spa constructs it as a queer heterotopia, reinvigorating radical modes of sexual intimacy. However, the realization of queer heterotopic spaces is not linear. While engaging in public sex that challenges the heteronormative context of the spa, the specter of racial discrimination threatens this heterotopic vision. I would love for them to point out how any of this is racist. I'm sure they're never going to actually mention it. They're just going to hang it over the head of all of this stuff, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to go. Like they're probably never going to actually try and nail it down, because that would be too difficult for them. Given these hierarchical relations, theorized as structuring sexual fields more broadly, the Korean spa represents an instance in which queer potential is simultaneously approached yet not fully achieved. Thus, case bars, while perhaps liberating from the here and now of coercive heteronormativity, ultimately falls short of the then and there of queer utopianism. So, it's good for you to know, chat. Remember when I said to you that they want to be able to be flaming and to be flaming absolutely anywhere, anytime, with anyone? There it is, black and white, ladies and gentlemen. Heteronormativity is not having sex in the here and now, or the then and there, but the queer utopianism, the idea, the perfect queerness is then and there, here and now. That's what it is. So, of course, the concept of straightness and straight oppression is the idea that there are appropriate times and places and people to have sex with, whereas homonormativity that isn't trying to conform to heteronormativity, in other words, true queerness, true faggotry, that is being able to fuck anyone, anywhere, anytime, anyhow, and for everyone to just be totally okay with it. There you go. Pretty much spelled out in black and white for you there. This is how it works. And someone in chat asks, why does the word bisexual never occur to people anymore? Because the term queer exists, and apparently the term queer has just subsumed pretty much fucking everything these days, because that implies anything and everything beyond bisexuality. Because remember, you've got to remember, these people think that men and women are not the only things that exist, when men and women are the only things that exist. So, data and methods. This study is based on qualitative content and discourse analysis of public comments posted on an online blog for men seeking sex with other men in Korean spas throughout LA. How? Oh, how did the author locate this? Why is the author familiar enough with a blog such as this to be able to cite it in a peer-reviewed academic journal? Did anyone have any answers for that? And this is how it works. Formed in 2012. Oh, so this person has obviously been aware of this site for a very, very long time then. Formed in 2012, this site provides a detailed review of each of the various case bars in the LA area and serves as an online forum wherein users interact with one another via posting on public, largely anonymous comments. This site is novel in its ability to foster a relatively contained sense of community, as it fulfills a niche sexual subculture. It sounds remarkably like basically the sock boards on one of the Chan sites. You're anonymous there, you can do whatever it is. There might be a meetup at some point, one of those weird sock meetups. But I think this is I think that might be what this person is talking about. Given the subversive nature of the information being shared, this platform provides a relatively covert form of interaction, allowing users to share otherwise sensitive experiences and opinions, especially as it relates to the details of their sexual lives. Oh yes, this is... Oh yeah, you can definitely tell this author, they are someone who is very deep in... They are deep involved in this. There is 100% some sort of personal interest in this, I think. You're going to go by a qualitative content thing, nothing... not quantifiably anything like that, but just qualitative. In other words, you are going to look at the flaming people on the websites, and you're going to sit and read all about their gay sexcapades, and based on what might only be a handful of people, like you might only be looking at half a dozen individual posts here or something like that, and that is enough for a peer-reviewed academic journal, ladies and gentlemen. That is, discourse analysis of internet comments is particularly insightful in this case, where the anonymity of online participation frees users to engage conversations in perhaps more generous and unrestrained ways than a physical interaction would allow. Following discussions regarding the ethics of online research, while some utilized usernames when interacting on this forum, I have elected to forego including any identifying information in my discussion of these comments. Basically, you don't want people to know your screen name because that might be a little bit embarrassing for you. Yeah, it's every time they talk about this stuff and how freely people talk about this stuff, I am just thinking of all of those posts in that fucking bug chaser forum and all those people talking about it and just fucking vomit inducing shit. But I imagine we're probably going to get a little bit of that sort of stuff in here, so let's see how bad this gets. It's going to get worse, I'm pretty damn sure of it. Further, I use a pseudonym whenever a specific spa is mentioned, because, as I discuss further on, protecting these spaces is a critical part of respectful K-spa engagement. Oh, you're being a little heteronormative in your gayness there. How would you do that? Why? Why would you do that? You need to be absolutely flaming, my dear author, because otherwise you're being oppressed by heteronormativity or something like that. As chat suggests, the screen name Professor Dickin Mouth. Yep, that is this guy's screen name. It'll be something like that. So, though these online discussions take a variety of forms, it is most commonly used to directly solicit sexual partners or to more generally spare experiences, both sexual and not, within K-spas. As someone in chat says, not sucking dick is a critical part of respectful K-spa engagement. Well, that just means you're doing it wrong, chat. You see, that's where you're wrong, chat. You're just being heteronormative. You need to stop oppressing the gay people. Go and suck that dick, chat. Otherwise, you're a bigot. The organization of this website requires users to post within a specific designated comment thread. Each thread is discarded and archived on a bi-monthly basis, whereupon a new thread is created. This really is a fucking Chan board that this person's on. Holy crap. This process allows for a more coordinated system of interaction, with the most current posts receiving visibility, allowing the possibility for sustained conversation between individuals. I collected and analysed approximately 14,000 user comments, which includes those entered from December 2012 through October 2017. I copied all text into documents, which I then uploaded to atlas.ti for coding and analysis. I treated each comment as its own unique thread, with subsequent replies to that comment being included within the same analytic document. This allowed me to preserve the flow of often disjointed conversations rather than analysing each comment in isolation. I get the feeling this person, like I said, I'm pretty damn sure this person is personally involved in this. I think there is a level of personal interest on this topic for them. After archiving these comments, I utilized an extended case method approach wherein I assessed initial themes using an open coding process and drew upon sensitive concepts from Angela Jones' Queer Heterotopias framework. My approach to data analysis is in this online field was thus informed by Jones's theoretical discussion, where I developed codes by identifying emergent issues and patterns in comment threads. This allowed me to engage in a process of theory reconstruction, locating the salience of these ideas within the Korean spa context. For example, codes were used to describe common conversations on the blog around spatial tensions. In the case of competing uses of the space, respect, when boundaries surrounding appropriate behavior were discussed, and sexual appeal, when describing the erotic qualities of the spa. After this initial round of coding, I grouped and recoded the subsets looking for variation in the ways that themes were discussed. For example, around what constituted respectful behavior, to what extent K-spas should be used for sexual venues, which they shouldn't, but moving on, and what was discussed as the sexual appeal of these spaces. Bug chasing and voyeurism for the most part, I would imagine. I then began to link these findings to existing literature on homonormativity and the relationship between queer sexualities, deviance, and sexual geographies. Given the historically vibrant and diversely situated nature of gay men's public sex culture, I turn to a discussion of the Korean spa as a unique sexual space. So, chat, are you ready for the findings and the analysis? This person is going to do some of that. They're going to delve into the deep lore of the queer, the gay, the faggot posting, and they are going to tell us what they found in this study. They obviously were in no way interested in this for personal reasoning. This is just for science, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure there is nothing else going on here. Here, I present three emergent themes: the eroticization of discretion, policing respectability, and sexual racism. I would please explain what this so-called sexual racism is, because you haven't explained it thus far, and I don't think they're going to explain it now, because that would require them to, actually try to pin down in some sort of objective way what it is that they're talking about. But we can't do that, because that's hard, so we're just going to have to tell you that sexual racism exists. In contrast to the overtly sexual environment of gay bathhouse, well, it's not a gay bathhouse, it's just a bathhouse that has gay people in it, illegally. They're not supposed to be there and doing that thing, but okay, gay bath, sure, why not? Let's just slander all of those businesses. Getting off at a K-spa requires more strategic action. Highlighting the discreet cruising practices these men use to transgress the normative context of the spa, I describe how they locate queer community and erotic pleasure, thus exhuming queer potential from heteronormativity. In other words, you're just finding out what signs and signals people use to signal that's it. That's all this means. It's just, like I said, a lot of flowery language around something which is really simple. This is why when you read so many of these things, it sounds like they're trying to hit a word limit, because this is what they do. They overly explain things in a way that basically repeats themselves a hell of a lot and uses a shitload of really big words, when what they're saying can ultimately be summed up in one sentence. It's pretty much what I find out about a lot of these studies is each paragraph can more or less be distilled down to one sentence, because they just intentionally couch it in all this big, flowery, obscurantist bollocks. Of course, I would imagine things being obscured by a large amount of bollocks is probably something this author is quite interested in. I thus position K-spas as a queer heterotopia, allowing men the space to violate coercive respectability politics. At the same time, a respect discourse is redeployed in order to protect the sexual utility of K-spas, thereby situating these transgressions as queer violations of otherwise normative space. Stop fucking repeating yourself. This is all stuff you have said before. Just do it. Thus, I demonstrate how queerness is mediated by heteronormativity at the same time as it seeks to deconstruct its logic. Finally, I discuss the mobilization of racial hierarchies in K-spas. Finally! Marginalizing Asian men and reifying white dominance. You've already said this once, just fucking do it. Don't tell me what you're going to do, just do it. I argue that the reinstitutionalization of these hegemonic discourses ultimately endangers the queer heterotopic potential of K-spas. I think the fact that it's illegal might endanger it a little bit more, but sure, say it your way, why not? So, nothing hot about getting off at a bathhouse, the eroticization of discretion. This is no doubt where you're going to hear a lot of stuff about. You're probably going to hear a lot of cruising stuff here, a lot of people's strategies. It's going to get hot and heavy in here, and it's going to make me want to bring out the heavy flamer, bring on the 2 bolt guns for this heresy, call the exterminatus, summon the Inquisition, get the cross, all of that sort of all that sort of stuff. As one person correctly notes in the chat, reviewers' notes, delete this. Well, chat, let's go on, chat. Let's find out all about the cruising, shall we? This is where things are about to get incredibly robust. As businesses open to the general public, Korean spas involve the mixing of various intentions for a diverse clientele. While relaxing alongside straight Korean men enjoying the spa, others may be cruising for sex. Men's cruising practices have a long and significant history, exemplified by Humphrey's seminal, I see what you did there, work, Tea Room Trade, where he identifies the highly choreographed nature of largely anonymous sexual encounters. Similarly, Delph emphasizes non-verbal forms of communication, arguing these erotic oases foster unique types of kinship and community. Such as those things like wearing certain coloured handkerchiefs in certain pockets, and things like, safety pins being used. Interesting thing about safety pins, which I always find quite hilarious. Safety pins, you may remember, recently made a bit of a comeback as a symbol of "you are safe with me" for non-white people and whatnot. Whereas ever since sort of the 70s and the 80s, a man wearing a safety pin was basically their way of saying they wanted gay sex with a condom. Like that was the code for that, because, safety, safe sex, condom. That's sort of what it was. So if you saw someone wearing a certain colored handkerchief, and they had like a safety pin in that handkerchief or somewhere else on them, that's what that was. Yep. Anal sex with a condom. But now the safety pin thing has come back and is now, you as a non-white person, you are safe here with me, because that's the modern incarnation of it, which I find very hilarious, especially given the frequent homophobic streak that things like the black community have, and then white people using that sign for dealing with race relations and race politics in recent years, and it having a simultaneous gay meaning when it's also being tied to the famously homophobic black community. Very interesting sort of stuff there, how it all meshes together like that. So, following this work, the boundaries separating particular desires between groups of men within case bars are similarly blurred, such that any potential signal could be perceived as benign and thus acceptable within the overarching heteronormative logic of the space. In response to one who questioned how to signal sexual intent, some suggested bodily cues, for example. Eye contact. Very important. Make your dick visible. I find adjusting my balls or dick can start things off. It could be interpreted totally innocently, but if the other guy responds by adjusting himself right after you do it, that's kind of a signal to make more obvious adjustments. We are getting a lot of inside information here, chat. If you find that you want to engage in gay cruise, you've already learned how to gay cruise in, what was it, the Dominican Republic, or was it, it was somewhere, some Latin American country. You've already learned how to gay cruise in that. Now you're learning how to gay cruise in Korean spas. You see, people like to tell me that my channel and my videos aren't in any way informative, but I think we're learning a lot here. Like I think there is a hell of an education that you can get from going through these peer-reviewed academic journals. Chat says, bad job interview tips. And someone else in chat says, eye contact equals consent. Good to know. Yeah, it sounds very, eye contact. That's basically consent. That's basically consent in these things. Eye contact before or after he's on his knees. Oh, that's fantastic. Just, as I'm sure some people are aware in chat, you should probably maintain eye contact throughout, because that way you know what's going on. You've got that trust bond. You see, it's oftentimes the first person to look away. That's when it's like, God damn it, you fucking homophobe. Like, you have to lock eyes and then never look away from each other all the time doing it. And then when everything is over, you can still maintain that eye contact and just say, no homo, bro. That's when you can break eye contact and walk away. This is we're learning a lot here. These rules are all very important. As this man notes, the use of eye contact Yeah, chat is really getting in on this eye contact as consent thing because it's very interesting, isn't it? Eye contact in this thing is basically seen as, hey, I've met your eye. Ah, obviously this is consent to gay sex. Whereas in recent times, because obviously people have been wearing face masks a lot more recently, we've been getting all those articles from various feminists and especially women saying men are giving them inappropriate eye contact. Like, how dare men look at you? Like they look at you for a little bit too long or something like that. Like there's been all of these things written about aggressive eye contact from men. So I think we need to get into this a little bit. There's a lot of nuance to this. There's a lot of nuance to these this eye contact meme. So I think we should investigate a little bit further. So the use of eye contact and other bodily gestures, that is basically windmilling your dick around. Like if you're staring at some other guy and you're just swinging your dick around a nice big circle like you're on a golf course or something, just shuffling around the room with it like that. You know, like you're doing some sort of really weird version of the Korean dance. Just instead of that Gangnam style thing, instead of the hands going up and down, you're just windmilling your dick around like whoop 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 and faggot style, whoop 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 and faggot style, and things like that. Then I think if someone's doing that, I think that probably might be a case that they're up to something. Just a guy stroking his dick and staring you straight in the eye. That's when you know. That's when you know they might be trying to imply something. Jesus Christ! Like, I love how this guy's like talking about how subtle this is. It's like make like a little bit of eye contact, like basically make eye contact with another guy and start aggressively stroking your dick. And it's like, okay, this is apparently the subtle way. This is the subtle way of getting someone's attention and implying that they might want to engage in some sort of aggressive eye contact and just going at yourself. Fantastic. That's what is considered subtlety. What a time to be alive. So, continuing ever so onwards. Someone in chat asks, can I scratch my balls without giving them consent if I say no homo? Or is no homo a gay sig? I think no homo is definitely no homo. That's how it is. I'm pretty damn sure no matter what you do, as long as you maintain eye contact and say no homo at the end, you're in the clear. That's how I understand it. Right, so ever onwards, the interpretive possibilities of a furtive glance or a quick genital adjustment illustrate the complex layering of meaning in the spa. The micro-interactional strategies these men use to gauge interest allows for the space to be simultaneously heteronormative in its manifest function as a Korean spa and actively queered as a clandestine sexual space. Yes, clandestine. Lock eyes with every man who walks into the room and starts stroking your dick. Clandestine. Very subtle. How can anyone not know what's going on here? If before, careful translation of this body language, that is fluency in interpreting those subtle bodily cues, was a survival strategy in the face of widespread violence, these men now eroticize and reclaim these structures of surveillance and discretion, commenting on the possibility and ease of cruising at particular spas. Some highlight this phenomenon. I've been to Saints Spa and sauna a lot, and 95% of the times I've had fun. It's hard, yes. Well, that's kind of how it works with men, but okay. But that's the exciting part about it. I play in the hot tub. Just hand job. In the steam room, budges, which is obviously supposed to be blowjobs, but I'm just going to call it a budges because it's more entertaining. And if it's dead and you guys want to play more, the restroom is a great place. Let me know when you guys go. I love it there. A fantastic story from chat. I don't know what happened. I scratched my balls and suddenly there were dicks airstriking my face from all directions. Well, you see that. Welcome to the Korean spa, bro. You get a bit of an itch. You better take that shit outside, because otherwise you're gonna have half a dozen cocks shoved down your throat before you even know what's going on. For this man, the thrill of cruising the spa is in the inherent difficulty of playing within a space where such activity is strictly forbidden. That is, the fact that it's hard, given the heteronormative context of case bars, is the exciting part about it. Similarly, another notes, I do like going to Paradise Spa. It's real small in size, not the nicest place really, but the guys are diverse in ethnicity. And, like myself, most are looking to fool around a bit in the steam room and sauna. No hardcore stuff, just showing off, hudge, and budges. I had a budge today in the steam room from an older slim Asian man with a nice twink body. Had to hurry a bit as others were in and out, but it makes it fun. Pause to vomit. And continue reading. I probably shouldn't call them maybe instead of calling them budges, I should call them the Bee Gees, but I think if I mention that, it might sour a few people who are listening to this stream on the band. Like, you're talking about going into gay steam rooms and getting the Bee Gees. Although that does actually kind of sound like a sexual disease in that thing, doesn't it? I went to a spa and I got a bad case of the Bee Gees afterwards. Well, it wasn't any fun. Oh, yeah, no, I kind of made myself a little disgusted thinking about the Bee Gees. About the Hoogies and the Bee Gees, because this is what happens in Korean spas, apparently. Everyone you go to a Korean spa, you get the Bee Gees. That's what happens. Every time you go to a Korean spa, scratch your balls suddenly, Bee Gees. Just happens. Yeah, the heebie-jeebies, the heebie-jeebies, as chat says, yes. The heebie-jeebies, the jeebie-jeebies, the Bee Gees, and the budge, all of those things that are really difficult to pronounce. Also, as chat suggests, staying inside, which is coincidentally what you probably should be doing rather than going to these Korean spas. These comments demonstrate that the unique pleasure of sexual encounters at a K-spa is the violation of societal norms regarding where and how sex should occur. For Jones, queer heterotopias are those ephemeral zones of queer emancipation, cultivating a rejection of heteronormativity and homonormative assimilatory politics. It's so very interesting that these people, this author, and this is the sort of thing that they talk about, like the idea that unless you are absolutely flaming, you're being heteronormative in your homosexuality. Like, it's such a bizarre way of looking at it. That if you are basically homosexual but you engage in like monogamous sex or sex not in public spaces, that somehow means you're being heteronormative. It's just such a bizarre way of looking at the world. And I know I've said it before, but I will say it again because broken records are fun like that. It's so very interesting that it's basically, unless you are completely and utterly flaming, you don't count and you're doing gayness wrong. Because this is how these sorts of people seem to think, apparently. So violating the privatization of intimacy articulates queer heterotopic subversion as these men negotiate their play against the heteronormative context of the public space. They keep talking about this sort of stuff, like this author is repeating themselves a hell of a lot. And I'm really not a fan of it. So importantly, these violations themselves are sexually stimulating, a process I call the eroticization of discretion. You don't have to call it the eroticization of discretion. This is a subgenre part of voyeurism. There is already a term for it. It is called being a voyeur or being voyeuristic. There is a word for this already. You don't need to try to coin these new terms. Now, I know what this author is doing. They are putting this here in quotes because whenever someone comes along and cites their paper, they want someone else to use this term to replace the term voyeurism, because this way it makes it sound more academically legitimate or something like that. Because this is what they do, and you notice this in pretty much every single one of these papers that they go into. They like to be the person who creates the term. Like, they can't just use the term voyeuristic, they can't just use the term exhibitionistic or something like that. No, we have to coin an entirely new term to go with this. And yes, as someone in chat points out, Pride Movement is fighting for gay rights to suck dick and eat ass wherever and whenever they want. Yes, this paper already confirmed that. This paper said that basically in black and white for you earlier. Which is really fucking sad, but this is how it is. Papers are long. This is the academic equivalent of posting a video 10 minutes 1 second in length on YouTube. Yes, it is. This is where, you know, they're padding it for some sort of reason. You know, obviously in the YouTube one, 10 minutes and 1 second, double the ad revenue. Papers like this, we've really got to hit that word limit, because then no one will actually bother to read it and correct it. And it'll probably get accepted just because it's got a lot of profound bullshit written in it. So, for these men, the possibility of being caught in the act is what makes cruising here fun and uniquely desirable. So they're exhibitionists. They're not eroticizing discretion, they're being exhibitionists. They're engaging in a voyeuristic act. That's it. That's what this is. Please, just stop trying to coin terms. One of the most annoying things about papers like this. Comments consistently prize the eroticization of discretion as rationale for pursuing sexual contact at a case bar as opposed to other public spaces. Indeed, gay bathhouses are regularly relied upon to distinguish the sex available at case bars. Sex clubs and gay bathhouses are based on private membership and not open to the general public. In these commercial locations, sex occurs openly and is acknowledged as the primary purpose for engaging in these environments. Conversely, the queer geography of case bars is necessarily transient, where fleeting moments of sexual interaction are structured by discretion. If sexual intent is inherent in the gay bathhouse context, then it is less so in case bars. It is in this distinction between case bars and gay bathhouses that many commenters identify the eroticization of discretion, locating the sexual appeal of negotiating this uncertainty. One giant fucking paragraph for saying, because sex is illegal in this place, it's risky, and people enjoy the exhibitionist nature of it because of that risk. That's it. That entire paragraph was a fucking sentence's worth of stuff. But the Korean sauna isn't the place to turn it into a bathhouse. Korean saunas are different. They're almost spiritual. But discretion is the name of the game, so follow the rules, yeah? Cruising is amazing, isn't it? The anonymity of it all, the way your heart races, the risk you take. Am I going to get caught? Am I going to be rejected? How far can I go? It's all very primal. How we satisfy this carnal pleasure because we can, because we are men. Obviously a quote there from one of the people on the forums. So yeah, they enjoy the risk of doing something illegal. It's pretty much it. Now I wonder how many more paragraphs and how many different ways this author is going to say the exact same thing. Evident from this comment is an intense eroticization of those ephemeral moments in which looking at another man in semi-public spaces involves an array of decoding mechanisms to determine if they too are cruising. Given systemic policing and the lack of recognition given to gay men's sexual subjectivities, queers created diverse erotic environments to resist heteronormativity, demonstrating the queering of spaces in response to this historical sense of placelessness. That commenter, longing for a romantic return to the practices, identifies case bars to be able to achieve that almost spiritual potential. Very verbose repetition here. I'm getting a little bit bored by this. Come on, you need to go a little bit further with this because you're just repeating yourself here. So, Conversely, commenters frame the overt, unconcealed form of sexuality characterizing gay bathhouses as a regression in the queer eroticism of gay spas. Right, let's see what this person has to say. Holy shit, okay, they wrote quite a lot here. Leaving your cock rings and Prince Alberts at home if you're going to be walking around a Korean spa. Get a clue. Bathhouse / sex club, everybody's having sex or trying to. Nobody's going to be made uncomfortable by you doing it. Korean spa, a mix of straight and gay guys, some traditional hetero Koreans, some, not all of the gay guys, are there to have sex, and the fun is doing it reasonably discreetly or in a room where everyone is cool. If you're looking for a phone number, go to a gay bathhouse or Grindr. Otherwise, most are going to these straight-ish establishments for a discreet element. I think not to be stalked and analysed afterwards. I miss when Spa-land was relatively new. You can go there to relax and play was discreet, fun and exciting because you did not know if the person was into it or not. Did he mean to touch my hand? Did he just yank on his dick? Was that a signal? Is he down to play? Now, whenever I go to Spa-land, it seems more like a bathhouse than a spa. I feel more turned off by the abundance of play and the lack of discretion. Fantastic. So, pointing out, ladies and gentlemen, the phrase cock rings made it into an academic paper, peer-reviewed academic paper. This part was not necessary. You could have just started here. You didn't add, this part of the sentence really didn't add very much to this quote. It kind of could have just started there. But I think this author really just wanted to get the phrase cock rings and Prince Albert into their paper. I love how so much of this is based on, as chat notices, did he just yank on his dick very discreet? Well, that's what we were talking about, chat, earlier. You know, if you make eye contact with someone and start vigorously stroking yourself, apparently that is considered to be a very subtle sign. Yep. Also, apparently just yanking on your dick, that's science now. That is social science, just pulling on your bell end, just grabbing a handful of it and just, oh, there we go. Yeah, that's a scientifically determined sign that is very subtle and hard to miss, apparently. These commenters distinguish between gay bathhouses and Korean spas, establishing the latter as fostering more desirable sexual interactions by virtue of their discreet nature. In a gay bathhouse, you can be certain that the answer to the question, did he just yank on his dick, is a resounding yes. I mean, I'm pretty sure if someone obviously does that, then it's like, well, yes, that is what they did. It's whether or not that has any deeper meaning to it or not. That is the real question. The pretense of K-spas as straightish social sexual practices, however, offer situations where such certainty is never assured. The possibility of making someone uncomfortable by engaging in K-spa sex represents a critical element of the erotic potential of the space. This queering of space pushes against the boundaries of respectable sexual citizenship, an act that is itself arousing. Please stop repeating yourself. My God, this person is relentless. It's like, oh, it's a little bit dangerous and it's a bit risky and some people like that. You have said this so freaking many times in so many different ways. Stop repeating yourself. Actually get into the meat of what you want to talk about. While I do not assume that every man sucking cock at a Korean spa is articulating an ethos of queer resistance, wow, academia, ladies and gentlemen, peer-reviewed academia 2020. I do not assume that every man sucking a cock at a Korean spa is articulating an ethos of queer resistance. Others demonstrate an intentional transgression and queering of an otherwise heteronormative institution, for example, further highlighting the queerness of violating imposed sexual norms. One commenter writes, after Pride or anti-Pride soaking tonight, anyone planning an after Pride or an anti-Pride soak tonight at Whitney Spa? Or will everyone be having fun soaking at Flex and other men's play places where you can misbehave legally and without offending others? As someone in chat correctly points out, they're always on a loop. If they stop repeating themselves, the paper would be 1/3 the size. Honestly, I would love for papers like this to be 1/3 the size, because that would be so much better. Because that way I wouldn't have to read through so much absolute shit. Here, the illegality of subverting case bars as a space for gay sex is identified in contradistinction, both to the segregated sex club environment and contemporary demonstrations of commercialized pride. This man's comment suggests a rejection of homonormative respectability politics, reimagining the Korean spa as a subaltern site of queer eroticism amongst a sanitized gay world where one can legally misbehave. So again, saying it for the however many hundredth time, because these papers fucking repeat themselves forever, being gay and having gay sex in a normal place is heteronormative in its nature, and you're being oppressed. True queerness is doing whoever you want, whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, and no one being able to say anything about it. Because they have to keep saying it over and over and over and over again. Without the discretion required of sex at case bars, the thrill of transgressive queer intimacies evaporates, and as one man puts it, nothing hot about getting off at a bathhouse. Same reason why we go to Korean spas. It's not supposed to be happening. Discreet. Once again, repeating yourself. We know that you're not supposed to be doing it at the fucking spa. We know that some people find that thrilling. You've said it a dozen times by now. While it is perhaps easy to dichotomize queer spaces as inherently progressive and heterosexual space as dominant and normative, queer scholarship complicates this narrative. Indeed, it is the heteronormative logic of the case bar context that here gives rise to queerness. As a queer heterotopia, case bars provide modes of sexual being that threaten homonormativity. In other words, because you're not having normal sex in a normal place, or even gay sex in a normal place, that means you're not being properly queer, which means you're being normative, and as we all well know, normative bad, so you've got to be absolutely flaming, get out there and do it where anyone and everyone can see. The eroticization of discretion, read exhibitionist/voyeurism, by these men constructs the Korean spa as one such space from which to challenge respectable sexual citizenship. They are cast by participants as liminal spaces where queer eroticism under constant threat of dissolution is simultaneously realized and undermined. Liminally, that is the straight-ish quality of the spa, is thus positioned here as a constitutive element of queer heterotopic potential. At the same time, I do not mean to suggest that Korean spas offer something never before devised by queer communities. Indeed, queer scholarship has long examined the dynamics of queering spaces in relation to the violence of the heteronormative society. In other words, you have examined how gay people do gay things in some places sometimes, and people don't like it because you're not supposed to be having sex in those spaces because it's not fucking appropriate. However, given rapid cultural shifts around gay identity, Korean spas provide a foothold to consider the contemporary meanings and significance of these historic practices. Moving conversations beyond the typical bars, gayborhoods, and bathhouses allows us to explore the potential constellation of queer spaces in an era of ossifying homonormative practices where the struggle for queer heterotopic subversions endures. In other words, we want to be able to do this shit wherever we want, and if we can't do that, then we're being oppressed by some sort of normalcy. Because normalcy bad, degeneracy good. Be discreet and respectful, policing respectable behaviour. I wonder, this is just going to be the part of the paper which repeats all about how normalization bad and degeneracy good, and you have to do this thing over and over and over again. This I sense is going to be a lot of copy paste here. So I'll just plow through this and then we'll see what happens. I doubt there's going to be anything new written in this particular part of it. Yeah, they do want to be oppressed by normalcy. They do want that, chat. That's what they want. Like they don't want to be accepted. This is why they keep talking about how they need to be doing proper queerness, pushing the boundaries, because if you're being accepted, then you're being normalized, and they don't want that, because they don't want that. They need to be oppressed by something. So yeah, let's plow through this particular bit, because I really don't think they're going to say anything new, because they've been repeating themselves for about the last 4 pages now. So let's see. Given the novelty of case bars as fostering uniquely erotic sexual scenarios, there are concerted efforts to ensure its ongoing existence as a queer heterotopia. Due to competing tensions resulting from the subversion of the manifest function of the spa, some men increasingly express concern over its persistence. As certain case bars become known for cruising, drawing more clientele seeking to capitalize on the latent sexual potential, case bar owners often respond by attempting to curb such behavior. One commenter writes, "When I first went to Renewed You Spa 3 or 4 years ago, it had a fair amount of cruising, despite the tight quarters and mostly straight Asian clientele. The first big change came when they installed bright lights in the sleep room opposite the lockers. It used to be fairly dark and with a door. I'll admit I had a couple of fun experiences in there. Then the bright light came in and I took the hint. Now they have taken away the doors to the sleep areas and even added bright lights in the sauna and steam room. It's a big sign that Renewed You management does not want any inappropriate activity." Acknowledging the escalation of sex in these spaces, case bar owners, we should call them gay bar owners, but case bar owners, take precautions like removing doors and installing lights to discourage inappropriate activity. Documenting the evolution of physical changes to the space, this comment suggests that while overlapping logics within the Korean spa allows for certain transgressions to occur, these violations also necessarily jeopardize the space, yes, because it's illegal. In a call to resist this potential dissolution, many commenters discuss the necessity of respect. Here, discretion becomes not only eroticized, but situated as a sign of respectful citizenship. Commenters regularly invoke discourses of respect, attempting to police the space and preserve its queer erotic potential. Yeah, because what you're doing is illegal, and they don't want to get caught because they'll get arrested, and the place will be closed down. That's pretty much it. But yes, they are basically just repeating themselves. Oh, it's so naughty, it's so bad, and we shouldn't be doing it, and oh, I'm so hot and bothered. And yeah, you've said this so many times before. Stop repeating it. Get to something new. Come on. Come on. Oh dear, someone in chat has said something very interesting. With more than 750 live viewers, you are double the number of viewers Joe Biden had in a live stream the other day. Think about that. Well, yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. To be honest, I'm surprised it's as high as it is, because it sort of tends to float somewhere around 600 to 1,000. I'm still surprised it's that many, given how heavily shadow banned my channel is. But yeah, I don't think people care that much about the other thing. Let's be honest, chat, this is far more interesting. I think you're going to learn a lot more listening to this than you are listening to a very sleepy old man with dementia being pushed around by handlers with earpieces and reading off of scripts. 180 years in the Senate. Yes, because the man is a fucking vampire. I think that might actually be true. I think Joe Biden might actually be a vampire. I don't think he was lying when he said he's been on the Senate for 180 years. Because if you take that and how frequently he likes to smell young children, I think he might actually be a vampire. He's just smelling them for the blood so that he can just get in there, get a little nip, and then keep himself in the state that he's in. I think that might actually be how he's survived for the 180 years that apparently he's been there. So I think that's how it is. Apparently someone has said my channel showed up in their feed today for the first time in like a year. Wow. That's all I can say. It's fantastic. And someone says you received no notification for the live stream. You're shocked. Are you really shocked? Are you? We know this channel is horrendously shadow banned because, you say all the bad things that YouTube doesn't want you to say. So you get put in the naughty corner. You get put down in that little place where no one is allowed to see it, because you don't question it. Don't say the things that YouTube doesn't like. We've got communists that we need to prop up and give all of the time and the money and the attention to, because those are the good guys. Those are the good people. You know, those people who get the puff pieces written about them in the mainstream media, but they're so subversive. They're super duper subversive, and they're totally going against the grain of society, even though they literally have the entirety of society backing them up. They have all of the institutions on their side. They have every major news network fucking tonguing their assholes, talking about how great they are. But those are the people who are pushing the boundaries. Those are the people who are really fucking subversive for society. People like me in the deepest, darkest fucking dank pits of YouTube, shadow banned into oblivion where barely anyone can ever fucking see or hear you. We are the people with the mainstream and all the power and all of that shit. Speaking of which, there was actually a very amusing email which I got from Patreon not all that long ago. They were talking about how they expressly created an event, and it was called the Dissenting Voices. You know, they were talking about how they were going to have all of those, you know, dissenters to society, those people who were changing the world for the better and fighting against the power, and it was basically a panel of feminists. Which is like, wow, you consider that to be a dissenting voice? Like mainstream fucking feminist talking points. That's dissenting now, is it? Yeah, okay, sure, if you say so. You know, those people who get picked up by every sort of mainstream thing and get shoved down everyone's throats whether they want them there or not. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the dissenting voice, is it? Alright, moving ever so swiftly onwards with the Homofagula, the paper. Get it? Homofagula? It's like Dracula, but gay. Gay Dracula. Also known as Fagula. Homofagula. Get it? Because it's October, and it's spooky, it's scary. Like the little fucking ghost that we've got on the screen. Look at that. Professionalism, ladies and gentlemen. This is what this is. We are tying all of the things together, all of the relevant themes of the time of year that it is. You see? Yeah. Jokes and humour. It's very important because, yeah, if I didn't have all of that stuff in the stream and I was just reading this thing, I would have gone insane by now. Even more so than normal. So let's continue on with all of this, let's continue on with this thing. Someone has just decided to be very neutral and tell their wife hello. Yeah. It actually is scary. Yeah, these papers are actually quite scary when you think about what they're saying. Like, you know, when you actually dig down into the depths of what these papers are saying, when you actually look at how they're describing homosexual people engaging in homosexual sex in monogamous relationships, in sort of normal and appropriate sexual relationships and places, and they describe that as being normative and therefore bad, and the transgressive nature of like having to go and do all of the gay sex out in the open where people can see, and how that is like proper queer spaces and how doing it normally isn't. Like, when you realize that's the sort of shit that they're pushing, it actually becomes really scary. Because that's when you realize the politics of these movements is let people do who and whatever they want, wherever they want, and if you don't like it, then you're a bigot. And that's a really dangerous line to be walking down. But, you know, this is the strongholds of these ideas. This is where it comes from. Yes, chat, monotonous relationships are a thing. Every relationship I've ever been in, always a very monotonous relationship, as it should be. So, let's continue onwards with the gay spars, and then we will talk a little bit more about it. So, the respect of the gay spars. Guys don't know how to be respectful or discreet. I like a little play like the next guy, but there are patrons of the spa who actually go to relax and sleep, and the last thing they want is to be woken up or bothered because guys want to play. And in reality, it's a spa, not a bathhouse. This is one of the last great spas. Please, guys, don't mess it up. Be discreet and be respectful and things like that. Please don't ruin Park Sauna. I was there the other day and a young dude kept tugging at his dick and motioning for me to join him in the dark room. If this sort of stuff gets more common, then the Koreans who frequent the place are going to raise hell, and I can't say that I blame them. They're going to turn into rooftop Koreans. It's going to be a thing. Like, the Koreans are going to get sick of you and they're going to take you up to the rooftops and they're going to deal with you the Islamic way. If that's where things are going to start going, I imagine, if you keep pushing it like this. Because the simple fact is, they don't want people doing things in these places because it's fucking illegal and they get their business shut down. While discretion is sexy, it is also discursively framed as respectful behaviour, necessary for the K-Spar's continued existence as a sexual venue. Open sexual acts both fail to capture the queer erotic potential of the space and could also get it shut down, ruining it for everyone involved. Thus, surveillance and the regulation necessarily structure the pleasure of disruption in these spaces. To further protect this sexual utility of K-Spas, commenters routinely police other men's behaviour on the site. Given the conventions of how to cruise discreetly, tactless transgressions are heavily discussed and subject to intense ridicule. I hate it when guys walk around the shower or tub areas with a hard-on. How freaking hard is it to let it deflate before you leave the probably more private area when you got it hard in the first place? I've been at Paradise Spa for weekends when Korean guys come with their kids and I got pissed and chewed out a guy who was doing that with no regard for the family atmosphere. Yeah, because, you walk around with it's not appropriate. Stop fucking doing it. Jesus Christ, I hate my life. Why am I reading this? Oh God, why? Demonstrating a clear lack of discretion and violating the etiquette around properly cruising the spa. Yes, they are pushing exhibitionism, chat. This is what this is. As we've said before, it's exhibitionism and it's voyeurism. This is all this stuff is, and this author just likes to keep talking about that over and over and over again, while trying desperately to be the person that coined a specific new phrase. This commenter chastises such behaviour as an overt disruption of the Korean spa's family atmosphere. These actions were not only framed as indiscreet, but also culturally insensitive and disrespectful. Others reflect similarly. I went to Dengue Spa recently and stayed all night. I just thought to have some rest in the sleeping room, and there was one Asian guy, don't mean to be racist, rubbing and touching my body and my dick. I already told him twice to stop because I just want to get some sleep, but he kept repeating it again and again. Come on, guys, don't be so disrespectful. That kind of guy really disrupts the beauty of the spa. I just recently began visiting Korean spas and really enjoy the relaxation, friendly attitudes, and of course the potential for fun. Thursday afternoon, I hit up Whitney Spa while laying on the floor in the clay sauna with another guy. This moron walks in and immediately drops his towel and starts stroking his dick. We both turned away from him and tried to ignore him, but he kept stroking, moaning, slapping his dick against his hand, like somehow we hadn't noticed his presence. Someone walked in the sauna and it didn't even faze him. He just kept stroking. Guys, let's not be dumb and ruin a good thing. Be discreet and be respectful of other guys at the sauna. Well, welcome to Academia 2020, ladies and gentlemen. This is how things work. My God, the degeneracy in this is absolutely horrendous. And yes, as someone in chat correctly points out, yes, this person is basically just saying that they got molested in this room. It's like, yeah, like you could have just like, maybe been a little more forceful in your no, like actually fight them off. Like, don't just sit there and let some person sexually assault you in the middle of a fucking sleeping room or something. Hey. These commenters frame the failure to be discreet and behave respectfully as corrupting the beauty of the spa. Importantly, in their identification of bad behavior, commenters also construct ideals surrounding appropriately queer K-spa practices, establishing themselves as morally superior sexual subjects. To accomplish this, many discuss K-spas as both a public business and a cultural institution, highlighting the complex tensions resulting from these overlapping fields of meaning. My God, this paper is just stuck on repeat. Yes, we know you're not supposed to do it, and some people do it and they get off on the idea. We fucking know. We got that 10 pages ago when you said the same thing, and then 9 pages ago when you said the same thing, and then 8 pages ago when you said the same thing, and then 7 pages ago when you said the same thing. Rather than limiting queer potential, the liminality of the space in this instance lends to the very possibility of heterotopic disruption. Thus, in these K-spas, queer heterotopic potentiality is situated by and mediated through the rearticulation of respectability politics. That is, producing queerness in these spaces emerges as a response to heteronormativity, from which discretion is required, illuminating these men's navigation and eroticization of what Gamson called the queer dilemma. Men engaging in K-spa sex both subvert the heteronormative family-oriented context of the space. Well, they're just going to say it again, aren't they? Yeah, this entire paragraph is just saying the same fucking thing again. Like, some people do this and they're not supposed to, but oh, that's the thing. Like, I'm just going to start skipping some of this because this person is just saying the same fucking shit over and over again. They're not actually adding any substance to their argumentation. Learn how to make hamburgers. Sexual racism in K-spas. Finally, they might actually be able to tell us why exactly there is the racisms. They might finally tell us about the racisms that happens in the K-spas. The eroticization of discretion and politics of respectability within K-spas position Asian men as trying to play with layered challenges in indicating this interest to others. For instance, lamenting over his experiences of rejection as an Asian man cruising at a K-spa, one commenter writes, "Some Koreans or Asians are there to play too. I think it's funny how when an Asian walks in, everyone stops. I know it's respect, so that's nice. It's just funny because this particular Asian is looking for play." So in other words, you are part of a demographic who is more likely to go to this place not for that reason, and so when some people see you, they might be like, oh, okay, stop doing this thing, because they might be one of those people who is not here for that reason, because that's the demographic that you're part of. And that's not being racist. That's people just being prudent in my mind, but sure, why not? To this man's dismay, the interpretive framework for evaluating Asian men's participation in the spa as a sexual space situates them as sometimes categorically outside its boundaries, absent from the tiers of desirability. That is, rather than being viewed as potential sex partners, Asian men are often perceived as simply not at the spa to play. Following up on this topic, others respond, "Of course guys stop playing and get up when Asians came in the steam room, because you could be a regular Korean clientele, not gay. Most of the non-Asian Westerner clientele are gay who came to play. People assume that you or any Asian guys could be non-gay and they leave behind you. And are there any Korean guys who are interested to meet up and play? Every time I go to a Korean spa, the only interested Asians are non-Koreans. I have a theory that it's because the Korean spa is a cultural rite done with family as a type of bonding ritual, and to treat it as a place to cruise would be disrespectful and defiling the Korean culture. I mean, it's also just illegal, so could just not do it, but yeah. I'm yet to hear the racism here. This seems like people applying basic mental heuristics to the situation, but sure, as we all well know these days, basic heuristics and learning from experience is racisms these days. So let's see. These comments demonstrate a recognition of competing logics which conflict and overlap within the Korean spa. As such, K-spas are experienced in diverse ways by participants with different orientations to the space. The identification of these businesses as important cultural institutions and considering Korean men as representatives of that context indicates a presumed heteronormativity of the space. Well, it's not presumed heteronormativity, it's that is the presumption of the space. That is what the space is. It's not presumed, it's that you are breaking the rules by doing this. But as this author has said dozens of times by now, that's the point. As many commenters note, refashioning K-spas as a place to cruise contradicts their function as a cultural rite, ultimately defiling Korean culture. These complex interpretive processes involve active efforts to queer an otherwise heteronormative institution, practices that are among the hallmarks of what Jones calls queer heterotopia. We know! My God, we know! You've said it so many times. The manifest function of the Korean spa is culturally salient. Stop repeating yourself. I'm just going to skip over the bits where this person is repeating themselves. So is here the implicit association with straight men as the thing? Yeah, okay. Quote, in my view, if you go to Korean spas to play, you haven't lived until you've gotten off with an actual Korean dude. It's a buzz partly because the Korean dude is breaking a huge cultural taboo by being sexual at a spa. The ultimate is to get off at a Korean spa with a Korean dude who didn't go to the spa with sexual intentions and may not have ever done anything with another male before. It takes a lot of nerve and skill to accomplish that goal, but it's so worth it, apparently. This is basically the gay fantasy of turning a straight person gay, because that's apparently a really fucking big fantasy for those people. As has been, we've actually looked at that a little bit. It's come up in those pornography statistics videos. You know, one of the most searched for terms for gay users at Pornhub is, after all, straight, because that's how it is. So here, the articulation of Koreanness as straightness, yeah, okay, we know, basic heuristics at work. Yeah, let's just go on to the next quote then, because you're repeating yourself with the next two bits. I know, chat, if I skip over the parts where they repeat themselves, I'll probably have to skip the rest of the paper. I know, I'm partially hoping that that is the case, because I get kind of frustrated when people endlessly repeat themselves without adding anything. And honestly, my voice has been starting feeling like it's going to give out for about the last hour. So I kind of want to get through this a little bit faster. So from this and other similar comments, the mobilization of a racialized gender discourse to categorically describe Asian men as femmes, bottoms, and small-dicked, well, I mean, that's true, but okay, contributes to their marginalization via cultural emasculation, a pattern entrenched in the history of Asian immigration. The continued articulation of this rhetoric via individual prejudice position Asian men as the bottom, both figuratively and literally, of the sexual hierarchy demonstrates the stability of racialized sexual capital across sexual fields in gay communities. That is, despite the Koreanness of Korean spas, Asianness does not seem to be afforded differential value within this context. Okay, this has actually been studied. It was looked at, I can't remember the name of the author of the study, but it was I think it was one of Gadsard's doctoral students. They actually did a study on this, examining penis size in homosexuals, and it was found that basically larger penis correlated with more sexual dominance. That is, in almost all circumstances where there were two men having sex, it would be the guy with the smaller penis who was the bottom. So it just seems to be a fact of how sexual relationships work, that bigger dick is more likely to top than smaller dick. So yeah, as Asians just having smaller dicks, that just seems to be the pattern and how it works. There's nothing racist about that. That just seems to be the pattern that holds. Someone in chat says, makes sense, and I did not need to know it. Yeah, there's quite a lot of size queens when it comes to the gayness. They like it big because, well, why not? At the same time, the above comment, along with many others, recenters whiteness in the space. Green notes that sexual capital bound to particular characteristics is not evenly distributed within sexual fields. Individual experiences within a given field are structured by the erotic capital, yet we know white guys walk around so fucking entitled, like they own the place and literally can't stand an Asian person in their vicinity, so they walk out in a huff, act rude, etc. When you are rude to someone on the basis of their skin color equals racism, plain and simple. It's a fucking Korean spa. Go get your rocks off at Burke Williams or some other white establishment. Despite case bars being a racially marked commercial space, this man implicates the power afforded to white bodies to both subvert and manifest function of the spa while rendering others invisible or otherwise undeserving of attention. It's again basic mental heuristics. Asians are more likely to go there not looking for sex because it's a cultural thing for them. It's just a mental heuristic that people apply because it's more often than not going to be true. Someone else who writes quite a lot about the racisms of this thing. Whereas an average white guy can get action at most spas, an Asian guy has to be exceptional. Usually two of these three: great body, face, or cock. Those are the alphas. The alphas are the Asians other races will make exceptions for. Built, tan, tats, and haircuts they probably paid $50 for. If they're lucky genetically, they have squarer jaws. Koreans typically are taller, Koreans again, and hung, Vietnamese. Again, these are generalizations, but you get the gist. If you are 30s white, fit, and attractive, Whitney Spa will be fine. Bonus points if you're tattooed and hung. Persians and Latinos who fit the above also get a pass. If you are black, you must be very fit and hung. If you are Asian, as another first-time visitor discovered, you must check all the criteria above to even be looked at. Again, chat, I think we're learning a lot here. This is very educational. Welcome to the Academy, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very robust, I believe, is the term for these arguments, for these observations being made here. As these men note, the degree of sexual capital awarded to whiteness affords power and desirability such that an average white guy can get action at most bars. However, they also discuss exceptions wherein some Asian men transcend categorical discrimination. That is, despite the stigma attached to Asianness, those exceptional alpha Asians with square jaws, fit bodies, and hung cocks have more access to case bar play. Recognizing the responsibility to overcome racial stigma, some seize this potentiality. I'm also Asian. I'll tell you that when I was a bit chubby, guys walked out on me. When I got in good shape, I had to force some guys off me, Asian, white, black. And these were good-looking guys, not weirdos. And really funny thing is, the very same guys who walked out on me when I was chubby were now cruising me hard. They probably didn't even realize I was the same person. I look at some Asian guys, they try to fit the WeHo mold, and guess what? It works for them because they are closer to their square-jawed, muscular, smooth ideal. If hamburgers are what people want and you make kimchi, you better fucking learn how to make hamburgers. So this is where the title of this section comes from here, apparently. This is the making of hamburgers. It just means being attractive. To be honest, if you're cruising for gay sex in a spa, you're probably not exactly the most normal person anyway, but okay. Rather than disrupt the idealization of whiteness in case bars, these commenters offer suggestions for succeeding in spite of sexual racism. I don't exactly think it's sexual racism. People just have preferences. Preferences is not racism. Oh no, wait, I forgot. The dictionary fucking changed its definition 2 days ago so that preference is now offensive. Because this is the current fucking year that we live in, where having a preference is actually to be offensive to people. because this is the world we live in now. Indeed, Green notes that actors are constantly negotiating status and position in fields of sexual stratification. The attainment of proximity to whiteness, that is, fitting the WeHo mold, allows some Asian men... Stop repeating yourself. Okay, repeat yourself some more, please. Please keep telling us about how attractive people are more attractive than non-attractive people. God, this is all this is. Attractive people are more attractive than unattractive people. And just repeat. And yep, this last paragraph says the same fucking thing. More attractive people are more attractive. So what is the conclusion? My God. Let's finish off this caffeine and then I will continue with the conclusion. And then we will be done, ladies and gentlemen. We will finish this god-awful stream. Right, let's get through this. Conclusion. Increased acceptance of diverse sexualities has allowed some gay men space within the charmed circle, giggity, of normative sexuality. Because, of course, remember, if you are doing gayness in a monogamous relationship in a normal sexual space, then you're being normative, and normative bad, and we need to do away with that because that's proper queerness. Never forget that, ladies and gentlemen. That is probably the most important thing that you will learn from this particular academic piece. It is that according to them, proper queerness is doing whoever, whatever, wherever, whenever, and everyone just has to fucking deal with it. So, by adopting politics of respectability, these men are awarded legitimacy of their sexual subjectivities, leading to increased social acceptance and legal protections. This conditional equality, however, comes at a cost. Queerness is reworked as to expand its cultural palpability, limiting sexual freedom and queer eroticism, thus producing significant implications for the changing landscape of queer spaces. Please, say something new. Stop repeating yourself, my God, come on. While some are absorbed into a homonormative vortex of sameness, others are rebanished to the underground where queer potential is exhumed from homonormativity. Operating between the boundaries of public and private, these transgressive and liminal spaces reproduce the denial of full sexual citizenship characteristic of the pre-Stonewall Closet era. The return to tea rooms, cottages, and back alley encounters. Basically, sometimes some people can't always do it, and it's kind of difficult, and that's part of the appeal of doing the fucking thing. The case bars and study operators, the thing and the fucking repeating yourself again, yes, we know. At the same time, case bars are contested space. Yes, we know, because you're not supposed to do it and people are doing it, and then that's the thing that makes it desirable. Rather than establishing a linear trajectory for the adaptations of depreciating gay spaces in relations to queer heterotopias, I demonstrate the complexity of accomplishing queer spaces in an era of homonormative practice. You haven't demonstrated a fucking thing with this paper, you pseudo-intellectual hack. Highlighting the everyday acts of resistance among queer people, I show that queer heterotopic potential exists in the struggle to queer otherwise normative institutions and spaces. This is just repeating exactly what was said earlier, that being properly queer involves destroying everything and having no sense of propriety, no sense of normativity, no sense that sometimes you doing something, you being an absolute flaming faggot in some circumstances, might not be appropriate. At the same time, queerness is here shown to be a contested domain wherein queer practices do not necessarily produce queer consequences. Thus, while case bars offer a glimpse of queer potential, they simultaneously fail to realize this promise. My God, you're a fucking hack, aren't you? You are just an academic failure. Person who wrote this. Right, what are your acknowledgements? Would you like to thank the fucking websites that you are obviously a member of when you were doing this thing? The author has no potential conflicts of interest. I call bullshit. I think this person regularly engages with the places that they're talking about here. It just, oh my God. Yeah. So that was the paper which did the thing with the, what was it called, queer heterotopias in straightish spaces. Basically a bunch of boo-hoo woe is me. I want to do gay things, but not everyone wants me to do gay things in all of the spaces. Therefore, they're a bunch of bigots who are oppressing me, because even though they accept people doing gay things sometimes, they only want them to do those gay things in the same places that straight people do those things, i.e., their own personal fucking homes rather than out in public. And I therefore need to push back on this, and it needs to be properly queer means you need to subvert that, which means you need to do all of the faggotry anywhere and everywhere, and if you've got a problem with it, you're a fucking bigot. So we're gonna get out there, we're gonna dress up in our fucking rainbow dildo suits, walk our leather dogs on their fucking leads, and go and guzzle a dozen cocks in front of a children's playground, and you gotta deal with it, bigot. That's basically that. That's basically the paper. I might have taken a little bit of artistic license with that, but that is basically that is the nutshell that paper is in. It's when you actually sort of read, sort of see through what it is that they're saying, when you see through the intentionally obscurantist, flowery nonsense that they're talking about, you realize what they're actually saying, and you realize that it's actually kind of worrying what some of it is. As someone notes, fishing for oppression of the paper. Yes, that is it. So, chat, how yeah, as someone else notices, the only reason LGBT acceptance is going down is because of LGBT. Yes, that is the reason why people are turning against that particular community. It's because of how fucking horrendous certain parts of that community are behaving, and how they are basically pushing any and all bounds of decency or normalcy at all. They just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. They basically want it so it is anything, anywhere, anytime, and you're not allowed to say anything about it, which is, of course, absurd, because there are places where that sort of behavior is not appropriate, and I think it's completely fine that we have spaces where that sort of stuff is not appropriate. But they need to be able to push back on that, because if you don't do that, then you're just a bigot. You need to just accept that those people are going to do any of that sort of god awful crap wherever it is that they want to, because otherwise you're the person with the problem. I think they just need to accept, like, look, in this time and era, very few people actually care whether or not you are gay. The problem that people have is when you are being a absolute faggot about it. That's the problem. And yes, I am basically borrowing that Chris Rock joke where he was like, people don't have a problem with black people, but they have a problem with niggers. Because that's the joke. Obviously, it's like they're sort of two different categories of the same people. That's kind of the problem that people are having with the gay community. Like, they don't actually have a problem with gay people, but they do have a problem with faggots. Because they're different things, because one of them is just normal people being normal, and the other are a bunch of publicly engaging degenerates doing all sorts of inappropriate shit in times and places that they really should not be doing it, and then screaming that everyone else is the problem. So, chat, how do you feel after all of this chat? Do you feel good? You feel like you need to go to a little spa, have yourself a little bit of a shower, wash yourself off, maybe go into a steam room, lock eye contact with some other guy and see if he starts vigorously stroking himself in, a really subtle way of asking you something. Hey. Someone says my channel is going to be shadow banned for another 5 years. Hey, I don't think my channel is going to last another 5 years. I really don't think that's going to be the case. Like, it's like I said, my channel is already shadow banned into oblivion. I don't think it's going to last another year or two. And frankly, I'm not entirely sure if I would want it to, because honestly, the draconian nature of YouTube really kills my motivation to do this. Because, what are you supposed to do? It's like, you're shadow banned, you know that, like, less than 1% of your audience is even going to be able to see any of the stuff that you put out, so it's kind of like, what's the point? Shall I just go and create another channel and then have explosive growth because that channel gets treated normally by the algorithm, and then it lasts maybe a year or two before it also descends into the shadow banned hell of YouTube? Like, I've noticed quite a lot of other YouTubers are doing that. They basically just go and start another channel doing all the same stuff that they were already doing, and their channels explode. They go nuts because there is still the audience for this sort of stuff, but then it only lasts a year or two, and then they crash back down into that because YouTube is the one fucking with them, basically. So what are you supposed to do? Just sprint, keep sprinting in order to stand still on this particular platform? Like, it's just fucking awful. I hate YouTube with a passion now, just as a company, as a platform. I think they're fucking awful. I actively tell everyone to get off of this channel whenever you can. So, yes, reminder, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like various videos of mine, you can go and find them on BitChute. In fact, permit me a moment to shamelessly plug. That's not how you spell that thing. No. Let's try and spell it correctly, shall we? There you go. Do the shameless, horrendous shilling thing. Hopefully the website will actually open. It's thinking about it. I was going to say I will put up the BitChute channel thing so that you can look at it, but I think YouTube is alright. I think it's going to take a while to load for some reason. It might just be that BitChute's being particularly slow today. But I was going to show you that so that... hang on, service unavailable? Is BitChute actually down at the moment? It might actually be that BitChute is down. No, BitChute isn't down. Hang on. That would be kind of worrying if BitChute actually was down. But it wouldn't surprise me because it's basically been relentlessly attacked. But, yeah, I was going to say, I do actually still do exclusive content on the BitChutes. I have released some other stuff on there, which you will not find on YouTube because it is far too spicy for YouTube to handle because, YouTube can't handle anything these days, apparently. So, if you would like to go and observe some of that stuff, there you go. Oh, look, there's exclusive videos on there. There are videos that you can't find on YouTube. Look, there's the Examining 2019's Me Time that's looking at pornography statistics, because those videos got banned off of YouTube really quickly because you're not allowed to talk about statistics. You got the Thermian argument one, which was pulled down off of YouTube because it corrected a bread tuber, and that apparently correcting bread tubers means hate speech these days, so you can go and see that. Oh, there's another one there talking about the future of segregated societies in Western nations and how and why that's going to happen. Or how and why that might be happening in the not-too-distant future. You could go and watch that, because you'll never find that on BitChute, or you never find that on YouTube even, because that's talking about things that YouTube doesn't want you to see or hear because it's not allowed. Because that's how it is. Yes, chat, this is where I've been hiding the whole time. I make plenty of stuff. There is still stuff which I make, and it goes onto the BitChute if it's too spicy for YouTube. I would tell you about it on YouTube, but as we all know, if I put a link to a BitChute video, there's also this one as well, which got taken down off of YouTube. But yeah, remember as I showed in a YouTube video once, that if I put a BitChute link on my commentary page, YouTube would shadow ban that post and it wouldn't go out to anyone, which I objectively showed because that's how biased YouTube as a platform is. But yeah, this is why I can't actually even tell you on YouTube when I do things on BitChute because YouTube will shadow ban that content, which is really fucking sad. pretty big indictment of how crap YouTube is as a platform. But that's the time and the place that we live in. Don't forget, yes, as someone in chat points out, BitSlide is an alternative to BitChute. So you can get a thing called BitSlide. It's available, I think, on Android and I think iOS, but I'm not sure. It's basically a client for BitChute, which makes it a lot more usable if you want to use it on a mobile device rather than on desktop. So go and check it out, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, there is exclusive content that I make on there because there are some things which are just too damn edgy for YouTube because YouTube doesn't allow anything anymore. And I am not allowed to post things on YouTube anymore because it just gets shadow banned anyway, because this platform is terrible. So, with all of that said, I am going to wind the stream down. This stream, I'll leave it up on YouTube for a few hours after this if you want to come back and watch it, but I'll be privating it probably sometime tomorrow, and then it'll be only available on BitChute because, well, you can't have things like this on YouTube because YouTube hates them, so you got to go and watch them elsewhere, I'm afraid. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for this, and I hope you have found it somewhat educational and informative. I think we've learned quite a lot about how to cruise for the dicking in the Korean spas and how that is kind of naughty because you're not supposed to do it, but some people like that. And then we repeated those few things over and over and over for dozens and dozens of pages. So there we go, chat. I'm going to leave you there. Say thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you all at some point soon. And my little ghostly spirit friend who has left my body will continue to do so. He will flutter off into the distance. Let's see. He can. Oh no, I need to do this. And look, he can flutter off out of the stream and out of everyone's life. So goodbye, chat. I will see you at some point in the future.